Jacob wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the broken fence post. Another thing that needed fixing. Another expense he couldn't afford. The ranch wasn't doing well, and he knew it. 3 years of drought had taken its toll on everyone in New Mexico territory. But Jacob felt it worse than most. He was alone out here trying to manage everything by himself. He remembered when his father ran this place. Back then, the ranch was full of life. Cattle grazed on green pastures, and his mother's garden bloomed with vegetables. But that was before the fever took them both. Now it was just Jacob, 32 years old, struggling to keep his family's land from falling apart. The sound of horses made him look up from his work. A group of riders was approaching from the east. Jacob squinted against the afternoon sun. They weren't his neighbors. As they got closer, he recognized the lead rider. It was Gray Wolf, an Apache elder from the reservation 20 miles away. Jacob's hand instinctively moved to his rifle, then stopped. He remembered Gray Wolf. 2 summers ago, Jacob had been riding near the canyon when he heard someone crying for help. Gray Wolf had been caught in a flash flood, trapped on a rock with water rising fast around him. Jacob had risked his own life to pull the old man to safety. Gray Wolf had thanked him and said the Apache people would remember his kindness. "Hello, friend," Gray Wolf called out in English as he dismounted. His weathered face broke into a smile. Jacob nodded and walked forward. "Gray Wolf, it's good to see you. What brings you all the way out here?" The elder gestured to the 5 people with him. "I come to repay a debt. You saved my life. My people do not forget such things." Jacob felt uncomfortable. "You don't owe me anything. Anyone would have done the same." Gray Wolf shook his head slowly. "Not anyone. Many would have ridden past. You stopped. You risked the flood to save an old Apache man. For this I offer you something precious." He turned and spoke in Apache to the group. A woman stepped forward from behind the horses. Jacob's eyes widened. She was tall, very tall, taller than any woman he had ever seen. She had to be at least 6 feet and 8 inches, maybe more. Her dark hair hung in a long braid down her back, and she wore traditional Apache clothing with intricate beadwork. "This is my granddaughter," Gray Wolf said with pride in his voice. "Her name is Tall Sky Woman. Among our people, her height is a blessing from the spirits. It means she carries great strength and wisdom. I offer her to you as a wife, to join our families, to bring peace and help between your people and mine." Jacob stood frozen, his mouth slightly open. A wife? He hadn't expected this. He looked at the woman. She met his gaze directly, her dark eyes calm and unreadable. She didn't seem nervous or shy. She stood straight and proud, even though she must have known what was being discussed. I don't know what to say," Jacob stammered. Gray Wolf stepped closer and lowered his voice. "I know this is a surprise, but think, young friend. You are alone here. Your ranch struggles. My granddaughter is strong. She can work hard. She knows the land, the weather, the animals. She will be a good partner. And this marriage will create a bond between us. My people will help you when you need it. And perhaps in time you can help us too." Jacob looked around at his struggling ranch, the broken fences, the small herd of cattle that kept getting smaller, the house that needed repairs he couldn't afford. He was tired of being alone, tired of fighting every day just to survive. But marriage? To a woman he'd never met? From a completely different culture? What would people in town say? And she was so tall, so very tall. Can I think about it?" Jacob asked. Gray Wolf smiled gently. "Of course. We will make camp near the creek. You have until tomorrow morning. Think carefully, Jacob. Sometimes the best things in life come in unexpected forms." That night, Jacob couldn't sleep. He sat on his porch staring at the stars. His mother used to say that when you don't know what to do, you should listen to your heart, not your fears. But his heart was confused and his fears were loud. He thought about living alone for the rest of his life. He thought about losing the ranch. He thought about Gray Wolf's offer. The Apache were good people. He'd learned that. And the woman, Tall Sky Woman, she seemed strong and capable. Maybe this was the help he needed. When morning came, Jacob walked to the creek where Gray Wolf's group had camped. The old man was already awake, sitting by a small fire. "I accept," Jacob said simply. "If she agrees," Gray Wolf nodded. "She has already agreed. She understands the honor of this union. We will have the ceremony today." The ceremony was simple and beautiful. An Apache medicine man spoke words in his language that Jacob didn't understand, but he felt their meaning. Tall Sky Woman stood beside him, so tall that he had to look up slightly to see her face. She wore a white doeskin dress decorated with shells and beads. For a moment their eyes met, and Jacob saw something in her expression. Was it nervousness, hope? He couldn't tell. When the ceremony ended, Grey Wolf's group prepared to leave. The old man clasped Jacob's hand firmly. Treat her with respect, and she will be your greatest ally. Remember, she is precious to us. We will visit often. Then they were gone, and Jacob stood in front of his house with his new wife. The moment felt strange and heavy. He gestured toward the door. This is home now, he said awkwardly. Tall Sky Woman walked toward the entrance. The doorway was built for normal-sized people. She had to bend down low, almost folding herself in half to step inside. Her head still bumped against the top of the frame with a solid thunk. Jacob winced. I'm sorry. I didn't think about the doors. She straightened up inside, standing in his small front room. Her head nearly touched the ceiling beams. She looked around at the modest furniture, the small fireplace, the simple kitchen area. Everything must have seemed tiny to her. I know this isn't what you're used to, Jacob continued, feeling more nervous by the second. It's not much, but it's sturdy. Your grandfather said you're strong and a hard worker. Well, I am too. Maybe we can make this work. Tall Sky Woman looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke her first words to him. Her English was broken but clear. I will try, she said. You try too? Jacob felt something ease in his chest. He nodded. Yeah, I'll try too. She turned and had to duck again to walk through the doorway into the bedroom. Jacob heard another bump and a soft exclamation in Apache. He looked up at his doorframe, then at the ceiling, then back toward where his impossibly tall new wife had disappeared. What had he gotten himself into, and how was he going to fix every doorway in the house? Despite his worries, Jacob felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He wasn't alone anymore. For better or worse, his life had just changed completely, and as he stood in his small house, listening to his new wife moving carefully through rooms built for someone half her size, Jacob realized that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected arrangement might be exactly what both of them needed. The first morning was strange. Jacob woke up early, as he always did, but forgot for a moment that someone else was in the house. He walked into the kitchen and stopped short. Tall Sky Woman was already awake, standing by the window looking out at the sunrise. She had to bend her neck at an odd angle because the window was built too low for her height. Good morning, Jacob said quietly. She turned and nodded. Morning. They stood there in awkward silence. Jacob wasn't sure what to do. Should he make breakfast? Should he show her around? He'd never been married before. He had no idea how this was supposed to work. I usually make coffee, he finally said, pointing to the stove. Do you drink coffee? She shook her head. No coffee. Apache drink tea. From plants. Oh, well, I don't have any tea plants. Just coffee. Another silence. This was going to be harder than he thought. Jacob made his coffee and some eggs. He offered her a plate and she took it. They ate in silence, sitting at his small table. Tall Sky Woman had to hunch over to eat comfortably. Her knees didn't fit under the table properly. She shifted several times, trying to find a position that worked. After breakfast, Jacob decided to show her around the ranch. Maybe outside would be easier than being trapped in the small house together. This is the barn, he explained, walking her through the property. We've got 12 cattle right now. Used to have 30, but the drought. Well, things have been tough. There's chickens in that coop over there. The well is behind the house. And that field used to be for growing hay, but the soil's pretty worn out now. Tall Sky Woman listened carefully. She looked at everything with sharp, observant eyes. When they reached the barn, she walked inside and examined the structure. She ran her hand along one of the support beams and frowned. This wood is weak, she said, pointing. Rain comes, this will break. Jacob looked at the beam. He'd noticed it was cracked, but hadn't had time to fix it. Yeah, I know. It's on my list of things to repair. She looked at him seriously. Must fix soon. Big storm coming? How do you know that? She pointed to the sky, then to the way the wind was blowing, then to how the cattle were behaving in the distance. She spoke in a mix of English and Apache, trying to explain. Jacob didn't understand all of it, but he got the main idea. She could read the weather in ways he'd never learned. Over the next few days, they fell into a routine. But it wasn't comfortable. Every time Tall Sky Woman moved through the house, she hit her head on something. The doorframes were the worst. She bumped her head at least 5 times a day. Jacob heard the thunk of her head hitting wood, followed by a quiet exclamation in Apache. On the third day, he saw a bruise forming on her forehead. He felt terrible. "I'm sorry about the doors," he said that evening. "I wish I could fix them right away, but lumber is expensive and I need to save money for winter feed for the cattle." She touched the bruise and shrugged. "I'm used to being tall. Always I must bend. Even in your village?" "Yes. Apache homes are different, but still I am taller than others. My grandmother was tall too. She taught me to be proud, not ashamed." It was the most she'd said to him since arriving. Jacob felt a small crack forming in the wall between them, but the awkwardness continued. They didn't know how to talk to each other. Jacob would start to say something, then stop, unsure if she'd understand. Tall Sky Woman would begin to speak, then seem to give up, frustrated by the language barrier. The neighbors didn't make things easier. On the fifth day, 3 men from nearby ranches rode up. They'd heard about Jacob's new wife and wanted to see for themselves. Jacob saw them coming and felt his stomach tighten. Well, said Chester, a rancher from 2 miles east. "We heard you got yourself hitched, Jacob. Didn't believe it till now." The 3 men stared openly at Tall Sky Woman, who was working in the garden. She stood up and all 3 men's jaws dropped. "Good Lord," muttered Frank, the youngest of the 3. "She's taller than my horse." "That's enough," Jacob said firmly. "Yes, I got married. This is my wife. Show some respect." Chester laughed, not meanly but not kindly either. "Married an Apache woman. And one that size. Jacob, you're either brave or crazy. What do folks in town think?" "I don't care what they think," but he did care. He knew people would talk. He knew some would judge him. Some would judge her. The thought made him angry. But he didn't know how to protect her from whispers and stares. After the men left, Tall Sky Woman came over to him. "Those men, they laugh at me?" Jacob felt ashamed, even though he hadn't been the one laughing. "They're just surprised. They've never seen anyone like you. In town, people will be worse," she said quietly. "I have seen how white people look at Apache. I have seen the fear and hate. Not everyone is like that." She gave him a look that said she knew better, and she probably did. That night, Jacob couldn't sleep again. He thought about the neighbors' reactions. He thought about how uncomfortable Tall Sky Woman looked in his house, constantly ducking and bending. He thought about how they barely talked, how they were like strangers sharing a space. Maybe this marriage was a mistake. Maybe he should have said no to Grey Wolf, but then he remembered waking up that morning to find coffee already made. He didn't mention it, but Tall Sky Woman had figured out how to use his coffee pot and made it for him, even though she didn't drink it herself. It was a small thing, but it was something. The next day, Jacob made a decision. He went to his small workshop and started building. He worked for hours, measuring and cutting wood. Tall Sky Woman watched him curiously but didn't ask what he was doing. By evening, he'd finished. He carried his creation into the house. It was a chair but taller than normal. The legs were extended, the back was higher, and the seat was wider. He'd made it specifically for her height. "Here," he said, feeling shy about it. "I thought you might want a chair that actually fits you." Tall Sky Woman stared at the chair. Then she looked at Jacob. Her eyes were shiny like she might cry, but she didn't. She sat down in the chair, and for the first time since arriving, she looked comfortable. She could sit without hunching. Her feet touched the floor naturally. She ran her hands along the armrests. "You made this for me?" she asked softly. "Yeah. It's not perfect, but I figured it was better than nothing." She sat there for a long moment, not saying anything. Then she spoke. "Thank you, Jacob. This is kind." That night, something shifted between them. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. When they ate dinner, Tall Sky Woman smiled slightly when she sat in her new chair. Jacob found himself smiling too. The next morning, Jacob woke to find her already working outside. She was examining the weak beam in the barn that she'd pointed out days ago. When he came out, she looked at him. "Today we fix," she said firmly. "Storm is closer. I feel it." Jacob wanted to argue that he had other things to do, but something in her expression stopped him. She wasn't asking. She was telling him this needed to happen. "All right," he agreed. "Let's fix it." They worked together all morning. Tall Sky Woman was incredibly strong. She lifted beams that Jacob had to struggle with. She worked tirelessly, never complaining. He found himself watching her, impressed by her skill and determination. When they finished, the barn was secure. They stood back, looking at their work. For the first time, Jacob felt like they'd accomplished something together. "Good work," he said. She nodded. "We work good together. You listen." "That is good." It wasn't much. They were still awkward around each other. They still barely talked. The house was still too small for her. But it was a start. And as Jacob watched dark clouds gathering on the horizon, exactly as she'd predicted, he realized that maybe having someone who understood things he didn't wasn't such a bad thing after all. Maybe this arrangement could become something real. But first, they had a lot more to figure out. And they had a storm coming. The storm hit 3 days later, just as Tall Sky Woman had predicted. Jacob woke in the middle of the night to the sound of thunder crashing overhead. Rain pounded against the roof like 1,000 drums. Wind howled through the cracks in the walls, making the whole house shake. He got up and looked out the window. Lightning flashed, illuminating the ranch in brief, bright moments. Everything looked secure. Maybe the storm wouldn't be as bad as he feared. Then he heard it. A loud crack that cut through even the thunder. Then another crash. "The barn," he said aloud, his heart sinking. He rushed to pull on his boots and coat. Tall Sky Woman was already up, standing by the door. "I come with you," she said. "No, stay inside where it's safe." She looked at him like he'd said something foolish. "You need help. I am strong. We go together." There was no time to argue. They ran out into the storm. The rain was so heavy Jacob could barely see 3 feet in front of him. Lightning flashed again and he saw the barn. Part of the roof had caved in and the door was hanging loose, banging in the wind. "The cattle!" he shouted over the storm. "They're inside!" They ran to the barn. Inside, the animals were panicking. The roof beam that Tall Sky Woman had warned about hadn't been enough. Another beam, one Jacob thought was solid, had cracked under the weight of the wind and rain. It had fallen, taking part of the roof with it. Water poured in and debris was everywhere. 2 of the cattle were trapped under fallen wood. They were thrashing and making awful sounds. Jacob tried to lift one of the beams, but it was too heavy. His boots slipped in the mud and water. He couldn't get leverage. "Move," Tall Sky Woman said, stepping beside him. She bent down, positioned her hands under the beam, and lifted. Jacob watched in amazement as she raised the heavy wood by herself. Her face strained with effort, but she held it. "Get the cow," she shouted. Jacob snapped into action. He grabbed the frightened animal and pulled it free. The moment the cow was clear, Tall Sky Woman let the beam drop with a splash. They worked together on the second trapped animal. This time Jacob knew what to do. She lifted, he pulled, and they freed the cow. But the barn was still falling apart around them. "We need to get them all out," Jacob yelled. For the next hour, they worked in the storm. Tall Sky Woman moved debris that Jacob couldn't budge. She climbed up on damaged sections and tied ropes to secure what was left of the roof. She was fearless, moving through the chaos like she'd done this 100 times before. Jacob herded the cattle out into the rain. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than leaving them in a collapsing barn. Tall Sky Woman worked to secure the structure enough that it wouldn't completely fall apart. By the time they finished, they were both soaked, exhausted, and covered in mud. The storm was starting to ease. The first light of dawn was breaking through the clouds. They stood in the barn doorway looking at the damage. It was bad, but it could have been worse. The cattle were safe. The barn was still standing, barely. "You saved them," Jacob said, breathing hard. "I couldn't have done this alone." Tall Sky Woman wiped rain from her face. "You did not have to do it alone. That is why I am here." Something changed in Jacob at that moment. He'd been thinking of this marriage as something forced on him, something he'd accepted out of desperation. But watching her work through the storm, seeing her strength and courage, he realized she wasn't a burden. She was a partner. When the sun came up fully, Jacob saw people riding toward the ranch. It was Chester and Frank, the neighbors who'd come to gawk at Tall Sky Woman before. They had 3 other men with them. "Saw your barn from our place," Chester called out. "Came to see if you needed help." Jacob was surprised. Chester wasn't exactly friendly, but here he was, offering assistance. The men dismounted and looked at the damage. Then they saw a tall sky woman standing there, covered in mud, clearly exhausted from working all night. "She helped you through this?" Frank asked. "She did more than help," Jacob said firmly. "She saved the cattle. She lifted beams I couldn't move. She worked harder than anyone I've ever seen." One of the other men, an older rancher named William, walked closer to the barn and examined what Tall Sky Woman had done to secure the structure. "This is good work," he said, sounding impressed. "Real good work. You know what you're doing, ma'am." Tall Sky Woman nodded but didn't say much. She was too tired. The men spent the rest of the morning helping repair the barn. They worked together, following Tall Sky Woman's suggestions about which beams needed replacing and how to secure the roof properly. Jacob noticed how the neighbors watched her. They weren't laughing anymore. They were learning from her. Chester worked alongside Jacob, hammering nails into fresh lumber. "I was wrong about your wife," Chester said quietly. "When I saw her before, I thought some unkind things, but she's got real strength. And not just in her muscles, she's smart, knows what she's doing." Jacob felt a surge of pride. "Yes, she does. You're lucky to have her." Jacob looked over at Tall Sky Woman, who was showing Frank how to tie a knot that would hold better in high winds. "Yeah," he said. "I'm starting to realize that." By afternoon, the barn was repaired. It wasn't perfect, but it was solid and safe. The men prepared to leave. "If you need anything else, you let us know," William said. "And ma'am," he nodded to Tall Sky Woman, "thank you for teaching us some of your methods. They're better than what we've been doing." After they left, Jacob and Tall Sky Woman stood looking at the repaired barn. They were still muddy and tired, but there was a sense of accomplishment between them. "The neighbors respect you now," Jacob said. "They saw what you can do." "They saw I am useful," she replied. "That is different from respect, but it is a start." She was right, as usual, but it was progress. That evening, Jacob made a decision. He started measuring the door frames in the house. Tall Sky Woman watched him curiously. "What are you doing?" "I'm going to raise these door frames," he said. "And the ceiling beams, too. I've been watching you hit your head for 2 weeks now, and I can't stand it anymore. After what you did today, saving the cattle in the barn, it's the least I can do." "That is expensive work," she said carefully. "You said money is tight." "It is, but you're worth it. This is your home now, and you shouldn't have to bend and duck every time you walk through it." For the second time, Jacob saw her eyes get shiny. She turned away quickly, but not before he saw her wipe at them. "Thank you," she said softly. Over the next few days, Jacob worked on raising the door frames. Tall Sky Woman helped, holding boards in place while he nailed them. They worked together, and with each hour, they talked a little more. She taught him Apache words. He helped her with English phrases. One evening, as they finished raising the last door frame, Tall Sky Woman walked through the house without ducking once. She moved freely, standing tall and straight. She went through each doorway, testing them all. Then she smiled. It was the first real smile Jacob had seen from her. It transformed her whole face, making her look younger and less guarded. "This feels like home now," she said. Jacob smiled back. "Good, because it is your home." They stood there, in the newly modified house, both of them dirty from work, both of them tired, but both of them feeling something they hadn't felt before. They felt like a team, like partners. Like maybe, just maybe, they were becoming more than strangers forced together by circumstance. Outside, the sky was clear. The storm had passed. And inside, something new was beginning to grow. Something neither of them had expected when this arrangement started. Trust, respect, and the first seeds of something that might one day become real friendship, or perhaps even more. Life on the ranch settled into a better rhythm over the next month. Jacob and Tall Sky Woman worked together every day. She taught him how to read the weather, how to find water underground, and which plants could be used for medicine. He taught her more English. showed her how to manage the accounts, and explained the ways of dealing with townspeople and merchants. They still had awkward moments. Sometimes they'd reach for the same tool and their hands would touch and both would pull back quickly. Sometimes they'd catch each other staring and look away. But the silences between them were no longer uncomfortable. They were just quiet moments of two people learning to live together. Then the letter came. Jacob found it nailed to his fence post one morning. It was written on fancy paper with elaborate handwriting. The letter was from someone named Silas Crow, who introduced himself as a land developer from Philadelphia. The letter said that Crow was interested in purchasing Jacob's ranch for a generous price. He was planning to bring the railroad through this area, and Jacob's land was in the perfect location. Crow wanted to meet and discuss terms. Jacob showed the letter to Tall Sky Woman. "What do you think?" She read it slowly, her English reading skills improving every day. "This man offers much money. He says he'll make a generous offer. But I'm not interested in selling. This is my family's land." "Then tell him no." "I will." But Silas Crow wasn't the type of man who took no for an answer easily. A week later, he showed up at the ranch in a fancy carriage pulled by two beautiful horses. He was a big man, tall and wide, with an expensive suit and a gold watch chain. He smiled too much, and his smile never reached his eyes. "You must be Jacob," Crow said, extending his hand. "I sent you a letter about purchasing your property." "I got it. I'm not interested in selling." Crow's smile didn't waver. "Now don't be hasty. You haven't even heard my offer yet. I'm prepared to pay 3 times what this land is worth. That's more money than a small rancher like you will see in a lifetime." "My answer is still no. This land belonged to my father and his father before him. It's not for sale." Crow's eyes hardened slightly, but the smile stayed. "Everything is for sale, son. It's just a matter of finding the right price. Think about it. With the money I'm offering, you could start fresh somewhere else. Buy a bigger ranch. Live comfortably." I said no. That's when Crow noticed Tall Sky Woman standing in the doorway of the house. His eyes widened, taking in her unusual height. Then his expression changed to something ugly. Well, he said slowly. "I heard rumors in town about you marrying a savage, but I didn't believe them. And she's some kind of giant, too." "How interesting." Jacob felt anger flash through him. "Watch your mouth." Crow held up his hands in mock surrender. "No offense intended. I'm just surprised. A white man like you marrying one of them, living with her. It must be quite the arrangement. My wife is none of your business. Now get off my property." I'm going," Crow said, climbing back into his carriage. "But think about my offer. 3 times the value. That's my final proposal. You have 1 week to reconsider." After he left, Jacob was shaking with anger. Tall Sky Woman came and stood beside him. "That man is dangerous," she said quietly. "I have seen men like him before. They smile while they plan harm. He's just a businessman trying to make a deal. I'll ignore him." But Tall Sky Woman shook her head. "No, men like that do not accept defeat. He will come back, and next time he will not be smiling." She was right. Over the next week, strange things started happening. 3 of their cattle disappeared one night. Jacob found a section of fence cut, not broken. Someone had deliberately let them out. Then supplies went missing from the barn. Tools vanished. Small acts of sabotage that were hard to prove but impossible to ignore. But the worst came from town. Jacob needed to buy supplies, and this time Tall Sky Woman wanted to come with him. She'd been working on her English and wanted to practice with different people. They rode into town together. Jacob saw people staring immediately. He'd expected that, but this time the stares felt hostile. People whispered to each other as they passed. Some shopkeepers who usually waved hello turned away. At the general store, the owner, Mr. Patterson, who'd always been friendly, barely looked at them. "I need flour, sugar, and coffee," Jacob said. Patterson got the items but didn't make conversation like he usually did. When Jacob tried to pay, Patterson said, "That'll be double the usual price." "Double? Why, new policy. For certain customers." Jacob felt his face get hot. "What certain customers?" Patterson glanced at Tall Sky Woman, then away. "You know what I mean?" "No, I don't. Explain it to me." Before Patterson could answer, Tall Sky Woman touched Jacob's arm. "Let us go. We do not need to buy from a man who does not want our money." They left the store. Outside, a group of men were gathered on the street. One of them called out, "That's the one who married the savage. Look at the size of her. She's a freak." Jacob turned to confront them. But Tall Sky Woman held his arm firmly. Do not fight them. That is what they want. But the men followed them, shouting insults. They called Tall Sky Woman terrible names. They called Jacob a traitor to his race. One man threw a rock that hit their wagon. Jacob stopped the wagon and jumped down. That's enough. The biggest of the men, a ranch hand Jacob recognized, stepped forward. What are you going to do about it? You made your choice when you married that Apache giant. Now you deal with the consequences. A crowd was gathering. Jacob looked around and saw no friendly faces. Even people he'd known for years looked away or watched with cold eyes. Then he understood. Someone had been spreading lies. Someone had been turning the town against him. And he knew exactly who. Silas Crow put you up to this, didn't he? Jacob said. The ranch hand grinned. Mr. Crow just opened our eyes to what you really are. A man who betrays his own kind. Living with an Apache woman like she's equal to us. It's not natural. Tall Sky Woman stood up in the wagon. At her full height, she towered over everyone there. The crowd went quiet for a moment, shocked by her presence. I am Apache, she said clearly in English. I am proud of this. My people were here before your people came. We know this land. We respect this land. You call me savage, but who cuts fences in the night? Who throws rocks? Who spreads hate? You do these things and you call me savage? The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some people had the decency to look ashamed. But the ranch hand spat on the ground. Get out of our town. Take your freak wife and leave. Jacob climbed back on the wagon. His hands were shaking, but not from fear. From rage and hurt. These were people he'd known. People he'd traded with. And they'd turned on him because of lies and prejudice. As they rode out of town, Tall Sky Woman sat straight and proud, not letting anyone see if their words had hurt her. But Jacob knew they must have. Words like that always hurt, no matter how strong you were. When they got home, Jacob was still angry. I should go back there. I should make them apologize. Violence will not fix this, Tall Sky Woman said. And I do not need their apology. But we must be careful now. The man Crow has turned the town against us. He will use this. He wants your land, and now he wants to force you away. I won't leave. This is my home. Our home. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You would fight for me? Even though it brings you trouble? Of course. You're my wife. We're partners. I won't let anyone treat you like that. Something softened in her face. She stepped closer and put her hand on his shoulder. It was the first time she touched him deliberately, not by accident. You are a good man, Jacob, better than many. But we must be smart. Crow is powerful. He has money and influence. We cannot fight him alone. Then what do we do? She was quiet for a moment, thinking. We find allies. We gather proof of what he is doing. And we show the town who the real savage is. Not me. Him. Jacob nodded slowly. She was right. They needed to be smart about this. But as he looked at his wife, standing tall and strong despite the hatred she'd faced in town, he felt something new. It wasn't just respect or friendship, it was admiration, and maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of love. After the incident in town, Jacob and Tall Sky Woman drew closer. They spent their evenings together, sitting by the fireplace, talking about everything and nothing. The house felt warmer now, not just because of the fire, but because of the companionship growing between them. One evening, Tall Sky Woman brought out a small leather pouch. Inside were dried herbs and plants. She spread them on the table carefully. I want to teach you Apache medicine, she said, in case I am not here and you need help. Where would you be? I do not know. But it is good to know these things. My grandmother taught me. Now I teach you. She showed him each plant, explaining its use. This one for fever. This one for wounds. This one to calm the stomach. Jacob listened carefully, asking questions. He'd never paid much attention to plants before, but the way she explained them made them fascinating. Your people know so much about living with the land, he said. We come in and try to change everything. You work with what's already here. She smiled slightly. The land was here first. It knows what it needs. We just learn to listen. Can you teach me to listen? She looked surprised. You really want to learn? Yes, I want to understand your ways. Your culture. It's part of you, so it's important. That night marked a change. Tall Sky Woman began teaching him about Apache traditions. She told him stories her grandmother had told her. Stories about the creation of the world, about Coyote the trickster, about the mountain spirits. Jacob loved listening to her voice as she spoke. sometimes in English, sometimes mixing in Apache words. "My people believe that everything has a spirit," she explained one night. "The trees, the rivers, the mountains, even the smallest rock. We are not above these things. We are part of them." "That's beautiful," Jacob said. "Do you think I have a spirit?" She laughed, a sound he was hearing more often now. "Of course. Every living thing has a spirit. Yours is stubborn but kind. Like a mule." "A mule? Thanks a lot. Mules are strong and loyal," she said, still smiling. "It is a compliment." In return, Jacob taught her more about reading and writing. His mother had been a teacher before she married his father, and she'd left behind several books. Jacob brought them out and offered them to Tall Sky Woman. "I want to read everything," she said, touching the books carefully. "There is so much to learn." Every evening they read together. Jacob would help her with difficult words, and she would practice writing letters. Her progress was remarkable. Within a few weeks, she was reading simple books on her own. One night, she looked up from a book about American history. "This book says terrible things about Apache people. It calls us violent and uncivilized." Jacob winced. Not all books tell the truth. People write what they believe, even if they're wrong. "Have you read our history? The real history?" "No, tell me." She set the book aside and began to speak. She told him about her people's life before white settlers came, about the freedom they had, the land they traveled, the way they lived in harmony with the seasons. Then she told him about the wars, the broken treaties, the forced relocations. "My grandmother was born free," Tall Sky Woman said quietly. "She traveled wherever the spirits led her. By the time I was born, we were on a reservation. Small piece of land, not enough food, not enough freedom. My father died there angry and sad. My mother followed him a year later, her heart broken." "I'm sorry," Jacob said. "I didn't know it was that bad. Most white people do not know, or they do not care. But you listen. You try to understand. That is rare." They sat in silence for a while. Then Jacob spoke. "Can I tell you something? About why I was alone when Grey Wolf brought you here, if you want to. My parents died of fever 3 years ago. Both of them within a week of each other. I was supposed to have brothers and sisters, but my mother lost 3 babies before they could be born. So it was just me. When my parents died, I inherited the ranch. But I also inherited all the loneliness that comes with it." He paused, surprised at how emotional he felt talking about it. "I was angry for a long time," he continued. "Angry at God, at the world, at myself for not being able to save them. I threw myself into work trying not to think or feel. When Grey Wolf offered you as a wife, part of me wanted to say no. I didn't feel ready to let anyone into my life again. But I was so tired of being alone." Tall Sky Woman reached across the table and took his hand. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. "I understand loneliness," she said. "After my parents died, I felt like a tree with no roots. My grandfather raised me, but I always felt different. Too tall, too strange. No Apache man wanted to marry someone like me. When my grandfather said he arranged a marriage with you, I was scared. But I was also grateful. Grateful for a chance to belong somewhere." "You belong here," Jacob said firmly. "This is your home. You're not strange. You're extraordinary." Her eyes glistened in the firelight. "You really believe that?" "Yes, I see you every day. I see how smart you are, how strong, how kind. Any man would be lucky to have you as a wife. I'm starting to realize how lucky I am." They sat holding hands across the table, 2 people who'd been brought together by circumstance, but were choosing to stay together by something deeper. Over the following weeks, their bond deepened. They worked side by side every day and talked every night. Jacob found himself watching her more often, noticing small things. The way she hummed while she cooked. The way she smiled when she figured out a difficult English word. The way she always checked on the animals before bed, making sure everyone was safe and comfortable. One evening, she surprised him with a gift. She'd been working on something in secret. Using materials she'd gathered from the land, she presented him with a medicine bag, beautifully decorated with beadwork in blue and silver patterns. "I made this for you," she said. "It is Apache tradition. A wife makes this for her husband. Inside, I put herbs for protection and health. You wear it and it keeps you safe." Jacob was deeply touched. He took the bag and tied it around his neck. "Thank you. This means more to me than you know. I'll never take it off." "Never?" she teased. "Even when you bathe?" "Well, maybe then. But only then. They laughed together, and Jacob realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed this much. Life felt different now. The ranch didn't seem as overwhelming. The future didn't seem as lonely. One night, as they sat reading together, Tall Sky Woman suddenly spoke. "Jacob, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you regret marrying me? Do you wish you had said no to my grandfather?" Jacob set his book down and looked at her seriously. "No, I don't regret it. At first I wasn't sure. I won't lie about that. But now I can't imagine life without you. You've made everything better. The ranch, my days, my life. You've given me purpose and companionship. You've taught me so much. I should be asking you that question. Do you regret coming here?" She shook her head slowly. "No, at first I was frightened. Everything was strange. The house was too small. The language was hard. You were a stranger, but you have been patient with me. You have been kind. You have respected my ways and learned from them. You have made me feel valued. I do not regret coming here. This feels like home now." "Good," Jacob said softly, "because it is your home. For as long as you want it to be." She looked at him with an expression he'd seen before but couldn't quite name. Then she said something that surprised him. "Among my people, marriages are different from white people's marriages. We do not rush into feelings. We build them slowly like a fire. Start with small sticks, then add bigger wood until the fire is strong and lasting. I think our marriage is like that. We started with small sticks. Now we are adding bigger wood. And one day," Jacob said, understanding her meaning, "the fire will be strong and warm." "Yes," she agreed. "One day." They smiled at each other, and Jacob felt his heart do something strange. It wasn't just contentment. It wasn't just friendship. It was deeper than that. He was falling in love with his wife, slowly and surely, just like she described. Like building a fire, one piece of wood at a time. Outside, the night was peaceful. Inside, two people who'd been strangers were becoming something more. They were becoming partners in the truest sense. And with each passing day, each shared story, each moment of understanding, they were building something that would last, something real and true and worth fighting for. 2 months had passed since Silas Crow's first visit. Jacob had almost forgotten about the man, caught up in the peaceful rhythm of life with Tall Sky Woman. But Crow hadn't forgotten about the ranch. He'd been planning, waiting for the right moment to strike. The moment came on a cold morning in early November. Jacob was in the barn when he saw riders approaching. Not just a few men this time. A whole group, maybe 10 or 12 people. Leading them was Crow, sitting high in his fancy carriage. Jacob walked out to meet them, wiping his hands on his work pants. "What do you want, Crow?" Crow stepped down from his carriage with a satisfied smile. This time it was genuine. He held up a rolled document. "I have here a legal decree," Crow announced loudly, "signed by the territorial court. This land now belongs to me. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." Jacob felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. "What, that's impossible. This land is mine. It's been in my family for generations." "Not anymore," Crow said, clearly enjoying himself. "You see, I did some research. Back in 1847, a man named Cyrus Wellington claimed this land through a Spanish land grant. He sold it to my company last year before he died. This land was never really your family's to own. You've been squatting on property that belongs to me." "That's a lie. My grandfather bought this land fair and square. He has papers proving it. Papers can be disputed, and the court has ruled in my favor. You have 30 days. After that, the sheriff will remove you by force if necessary." Tall Sky Woman had come out of the house. She stood beside Jacob, her face calm but her eyes sharp. "This man lies," she said clearly. "He wants this land for his railroad. He will say anything to take it." Crow looked at her with mock pity. "Ah yes, the Apache wife. How touching that she's learned to speak. But this is a legal matter, and legal matters are for civilized people to handle. You have 30 days, Jacob. I suggest you use them wisely." After they left, Jacob was shaking with anger and fear. He can't do this. He can't just steal my land. "He can if he has the law on his side," Tall Sky Woman said quietly. "My people know this well. White man's law is used to take what they want. I need to see a lawyer. I need to fight this. Do you have money for a lawyer?" Jacob's heart sank. He barely had money for feed and supplies. A lawyer would cost more than he had. And even if he could afford one, would they side with him or with a wealthy developer like Crow? That night, Jacob couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch staring at the land his family had worked for decades. The thought of losing it made him sick. This wasn't just land. It was his history, his parents' memory, his future. Tall Sky Woman came out and sat beside him. "You are thinking very loud," she said. Despite everything, Jacob smiled slightly. "I'm sorry. I'm just trying to figure out what to do." "I have an idea," she said. "But you may not like it. Tell me." "We go to my people. To Grey Wolf. He is wise and has many connections. The Apache have fought against men like Crow for many years. They know how to find truth when white men lie." Jacob hesitated. "I don't want to put your people in danger. Crow is powerful. He could make trouble for them too. My people are already in trouble. We have been since white men came to our lands. But Grey Wolf is not afraid of men like Crow. And he cares about you. You saved his life. He will help." Jacob thought about it. He didn't have many choices. And maybe Tall Sky Woman was right. Maybe her people would know something he didn't. "All right," he agreed. "We'll go tomorrow." The next morning they rode to the Apache reservation. It was a long journey, and Jacob saw for the first time where Tall Sky Woman came from. The reservation was smaller than he expected, with simple homes and not much land for farming or hunting. People watched them ride in, their faces showing curiosity and some suspicion at seeing Jacob. Grey Wolf was sitting outside his home, carving a piece of wood. When he saw them, he stood and smiled. "Granddaughter," he greeted warmly. Then to Jacob, "Friend, what brings you here? Your faces tell me something is wrong." They explained the situation. Grey Wolf listened carefully, his expression growing serious. When they finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "This man Crow, he uses the white man's law like a weapon," Grey Wolf said. "But all weapons can be turned against those who wield them. Come, we must speak with someone." He led them to another home where an older woman lived. Her name was Running Deer, and she was the tribe's record keeper. She had boxes full of papers, documents, and old treaties. "Tell her what you told me," Grey Wolf said to Jacob. Jacob explained again about Crow's claim that someone named Cyrus Wellington owned the land first. Running Deer listened, then began searching through her documents. She pulled out several old papers, some yellowed with age. "Cyrus Wellington," she said slowly in English. "I know this name. He was a bad man. He tried to claim Apache lands many times, always with false papers, always with lies." She showed them a document from 1848. It was a complaint filed by the Apache tribe against Cyrus Wellington for forging land grant documents. The complaint stated that Wellington had created fake Spanish land grants to steal both Apache land and land belonging to other settlers. "This man was a liar and a thief," Running Deer said. "If Crow uses Wellington's papers, then Crow also uses lies." Jacob felt hope rising in his chest. "Can I have a copy of this?" "You may have the original," Running Deer said. "We have kept it all these years waiting for when it might be needed." "Perhaps this is that time," Grey Wolf smiled. "The spirits work in mysterious ways. You saved my life, and now we help save your home. This is balance," but Tall Sky Woman looked worried. "This paper is old. Will the white man's court accept it?" "We will make them accept it," Grey Wolf said firmly. "I know a lawyer in Santa Fe, a good man who believes in justice. His name is Thomas Henderson. He has helped Apache people before. We will send this document to him and ask him to help Jacob." "I can't afford a lawyer," Jacob said. "You do not need to afford him. I will pay. You saved my life. This debt is still not repaid." Jacob felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you." Grey Wolf put his hand on Jacob's shoulder. "You married my granddaughter. You treat her with respect. You have made her happy. This is thanks enough." They spent the rest of the day at the reservation. Jacob met many of Tall Sky Woman's relatives and friends. They welcomed him warmly, sharing food and stories. He saw children playing, families working together, people living with dignity despite the hardships imposed on them. One of Tall Sky Woman's aunts pulled him aside. "You are good for my niece," she said. She was sad before, always feeling like she did not belong anywhere. Now when I see her, she smiles. She has found her place. "She's found her place because she's made it her place," Jacob said. "She's stronger than anyone I've ever met." The aunt smiled. "She gets her strength from her grandmother. But she gets her courage from herself. You are lucky to have her." "I know," Jacob said, and he meant it with his whole heart. Before they left, Grey Wolf gave them a letter to take to the lawyer in Santa Fe, along with the documents about Cyrus Wellington. "Go quickly," he advised. "Men like Crow do not wait." They move fast and strike hard. You must move faster. On the ride home, Tall Sky Woman was quieter than usual. Finally, she spoke. I am proud of my people today, she said. They helped you without question. They shared what little they have. They're good people, Jacob agreed. I understand now where you get your strength and your kindness. Do you really feel I belong with you? She asked suddenly. Or do you still see me as different? As other? Jacob stopped the wagon and turned to look at her. Listen to me. You're not other. You're not different in any way that matters. You're my wife. You're my partner. You're the person I trust most in this world. I don't care that you're Apache. I don't care that you're taller than me. I care that you're you, and I'm grateful every single day that Grey Wolf brought you to me. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. In my language there is a word. Shy. It means my heart. That is what you are becoming to me, Jacob. My heart. He reached over and took her hand. And you're mine. They rode home in comfortable silence, their hands linked together. Behind them was a community that had offered help. Ahead of them was a fight for their home. But together, with proof of Crow's lies and allies willing to stand with them, they had a chance. The next day, Jacob rode to Santa Fe to deliver the documents to Thomas Henderson. The lawyer was a thin man with sharp eyes and a serious expression. He read through everything carefully. This is damning evidence, Henderson said. If Crow's claim is based on Wellington's documents and we can prove Wellington was a known forger, then Crow's entire case falls apart. I'll take this to the court immediately. We'll schedule a hearing. How long will that take? A few weeks. Maybe less if we push for urgency. Don't worry, Mr. Martinez. Justice may be slow, but it's on your side. Jacob rode home feeling lighter than he had in days. When he told Tall Sky Woman the news, she hugged him tightly. It was the first time they'd embraced, and it felt natural and right. We will win this, she said. I feel it in my spirit. With you beside me, Jacob said, I believe we can win anything. The court hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later in the territorial courthouse. Word spread quickly through the territory. Everyone wanted to see the showdown between a wealthy developer from the east and a small rancher with an Apache wife. The courtroom would be packed. As the day approached, Jacob grew more nervous. He'd never been comfortable speaking in front of crowds, and he worried about how the judge would view Tall Sky Woman. Would her presence help or hurt their case? Tall Sky Woman seemed calm, but Jacob noticed she spent more time practicing her English. Every evening she read aloud from his mother's books, correcting her pronunciation. She wanted to be ready. The night before the hearing, they couldn't sleep. They sat together on the porch watching the stars. Are you scared? Jacob asked. Yes, she admitted. But I am also angry. Men like Crow have taken so much from my people. They use laws and papers to steal what they want. Tomorrow we fight back. That gives me courage. What if we lose? Then we lose standing tall with our dignity. That is worth more than winning by bending to lies. Jacob took her hand. When did you become so wise? I have always been wise, she said with a small smile. You are just now noticing. He laughed and some of his nervousness faded. Whatever happened tomorrow, they would face it together. The next morning they dressed carefully. Jacob wore his best suit, which had belonged to his father. Tall Sky Woman wore a combination of Apache and American clothing. A traditional Apache dress with beautiful beadwork, but with a shawl and boots in American style. She looked dignified and proud. They rode into town together. The streets were crowded. People stopped to stare as they passed. Some faces showed hostility. Others showed curiosity. A few showed quiet support. The courthouse was already full when they arrived. People packed the benches, standing along the walls, crowding the doorways. Jacob saw Silas Crow sitting in the front, looking confident and pleased with himself. He had 3 lawyers with him, all dressed in expensive suits. Jacob and Tall Sky Woman took their seats next to Thomas Henderson, their lawyer. He gave them a reassuring nod. Stay calm, speak clearly, and trust the truth, Henderson whispered. The judge entered, and everyone stood. Judge Wilson was an older man with gray hair and a stern face. He banged his gavel and called the court to order. Crow's lead lawyer stood first. He was smooth and confident, laying out their case. He showed documents claiming that Cyrus Wellington had legally owned the land through an old Spanish land grant. He argued that Jacob's family had been squatting on Wellington's property for years. He made it sound convincing, the crowd murmured. Jacob felt his stomach twist. It sounded so official, so legal. How could they fight against such polished arguments? Then it was Henderson's turn. He stood slowly, deliberately. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he walked to the judge's bench and placed the old Apache document carefully in front of him. "Your Honor," Henderson began, "everything we just heard is built on a foundation of lies. And I can prove it," he explained the document. He showed how Cyrus Wellington had been a known forger, how he'd tried repeatedly to steal land using fake Spanish land grants, how the Apache tribe had filed official complaints against him years ago. "This man Wellington was a criminal," Henderson said clearly, and Mr. Crow either knew this and proceeded anyway, or he failed to do proper research before trying to steal a family's home. Either way, his claim has no legal standing. Crow's lawyers objected loudly. They argued that an Apache document couldn't be trusted. They questioned whether it was even real. They tried to dismiss it as irrelevant. Judge Wilson held up his hand for silence. "I'll examine this document myself." He read it carefully, taking his time. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Finally, the judge looked up. "This document appears authentic. It's registered with the Territorial Office and bears official seals from 1848. Mr. Crow's legal team, do you have any evidence that contradicts this?" Crow's lawyers scrambled, whispering frantically to each other. They had nothing. "Your Honor," Henderson continued, "I'd like to call a witness. Tall Sky Woman, wife of Jacob Martinez." Tall Sky Woman stood up. The entire courtroom gasped. Many people had heard about her unusual height, but seeing her in person was different. She towered over everyone as she walked to the witness stand. She had to duck slightly to enter the witness box, and even sitting, she was taller than most people standing. But she sat with perfect posture, her head high, her expression calm. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth in clear, careful English. Henderson approached her gently. "Please tell the court your name and where you're from." "My name is Tall Sky Woman. I am Apache. I was born on land that the government later made into a reservation." "And how did you meet your husband, Jacob Martinez?" "My grandfather, Grey Wolf, arranged our marriage." "Jacob saved my grandfather's life 2 years ago." "Our marriage was meant to honor that debt and create peace between our peoples. Can you tell the court about the document we've presented today?" Tall Sky Woman nodded. She spoke clearly, looking directly at the judge. "This document has been kept by my people for many years. It tells the truth about Cyrus Wellington. He was a bad man who tried to steal land from everyone, white people and Apache people. He made fake papers and used them to claim land that wasn't his. My people kept records of his lies. We knew someday the truth would be needed." One of Crow's lawyers stood up. "Your Honor, I object. This woman is Apache. How can we trust her testimony?" The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Wilson banged his gavel. "Order, order in this court!" But Tall Sky Woman spoke before the judge could rule on the objection. Her voice carried through the room, strong and clear. "You say you cannot trust me because I am Apache," she said, looking at Crow's lawyer. "But I have not lied to anyone here. I have not forged documents. I have not tried to steal someone's home. Can Mr. Crow say the same?" The courtroom went completely silent. Even Crow's lawyer had no response. Tall Sky Woman continued, her eyes moving to the judge. "Your Honor, my people have suffered much because of men who lie. We have lost our lands, our freedom, our way of life, all taken by men who used laws and papers to make their theft look legal. Today another man tries to do the same thing to my husband, but this time we have proof. We have truth. I ask you to see past my skin and my heritage. I ask you to look at the evidence. Look at what is right." The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "The objection is overruled. This witness has every right to testify. Continue, Mr. Henderson." Henderson smiled slightly. "I have no further questions. The witness has said everything that needs to be said." Crow's lawyers tried to attack the Apache document, tried to discredit Tall Sky Woman, tried every argument they could think of, but nothing worked. The evidence was clear. Wellington had been a forger. His land grants were fake. Crow's entire claim was built on lies. Finally, Judge Wilson called for a recess. He would review all the evidence and make his ruling. During the break, Jacob and Tall Sky Woman stepped outside. People surrounded them, some hostile, but many now looking at them differently. They'd heard Tall Sky Woman speak. They'd seen her dignity and honesty. It was hard to hate someone after that. Chester, the neighboring rancher, approached them. That was something, he said to Tall Sky Woman. The way you spoke up in there. That took real courage. Thank you, she said simply. An hour later, they were called back inside. Judge Wilson sat at his bench with a serious expression. The courtroom held its breath. I've reviewed all the evidence, the judge began. The document provided by the Apache tribe clearly shows that Cyrus Wellington was a known forger who created false land grants. The complaints against him are official and documented. Therefore, any land claim based on Wellington's documents is invalid. Crow's face turned red with anger. His lawyers looked shocked. Furthermore, the judge continued, I find that Mr. Crow either knew about Wellington's criminal history and proceeded anyway, or failed to exercise due diligence before bringing this case. Either way, his claim is denied. The land belongs to Jacob Martinez and his family as it has for generations. The judge banged his gavel. Case dismissed. The courtroom erupted in noise. Some people cheered. Others argued. But Jacob barely heard any of it. He turned to Tall Sky Woman and she turned to him, and without thinking they embraced right there in the courtroom. We won, Jacob said, hardly believing it. We stood tall, Tall Sky Woman replied. Together. Crow stormed out of the courtroom, his lawyers following. But before he left, he turned and glared at Jacob and Tall Sky Woman with pure hatred. It was a look that promised this wasn't over. But for now, they had won. Outside the courthouse, people gathered around them. Some offered congratulations. Others wanted to shake Tall Sky Woman's hand. She'd impressed them with her testimony, with her courage, with her clear intelligence. Grey Wolf was there, having traveled to witness the hearing. He embraced his granddaughter proudly. You spoke with wisdom and strength, he told her. Your grandmother would be proud. Thomas Henderson joined them. That was one of the finest testimonies I've ever heard. You won that case today, not me. As they prepared to ride home, Jacob noticed something. The townspeople who'd been hostile before were now respectful. Not everyone had changed. After the court victory, life should have gone back to normal. But Jacob found he didn't want normal. He wanted better. He wanted to build something new, something that honored both him and Tall Sky Woman. The first thing he did was start a bigger renovation project. The raised door frames had been a good start, but the whole house needed changes. It needed to be a real home for both of them, not just a place where she had to constantly adjust to his world. I want to rebuild parts of the house, he told her one morning. Higher ceilings, bigger rooms, a place where you never have to duck or bend, a place that fits both of us. Tall Sky Woman looked surprised. That is expensive work. We should save money for other things. What's more important than making you comfortable in your own home? She didn't argue after that. They worked together on the plans. Tall Sky Woman had ideas about design that Jacob had never considered. She suggested wider doorways, not just taller ones. She wanted a larger kitchen with counters at different heights so both of them could work comfortably. She even suggested building a porch with a high roof where she could sit and watch the sunrise without feeling cramped. Over the next 2 months, they worked on the renovations whenever they had time. Chester and some of the other neighbors came to help. The men who'd once stared at Tall Sky Woman now worked alongside her, impressed by her knowledge and strength. You know, Chester said one day while they were raising a new ceiling beam, I was wrong about you and your wife. I judged before I knew anything. She's good people, better than most. I know, Jacob said simply. You're lucky to have her. Don't I know it? The house transformation was slow but satisfying. Each change made it more theirs, not just his. Tall Sky Woman moved through the new spaces with visible relief and joy. She no longer had bruises on her forehead. She no longer had to bend and squeeze through doorways. She could stand at her full, magnificent height and feel at home. One evening, as they sat on the new high-roofed porch, Tall Sky Woman leaned against Jacob's shoulder. This feels right, she said softly. This feels like where I'm supposed to be. It is where you're supposed to be, Jacob agreed. With me. As winter approached, something else changed. Other Apache families began settling on land near the ranch. Grey Wolf had arranged it, purchasing small parcels of land from settlers who were leaving the territory. He wanted his people to have more freedom than the reservation allowed, and he trusted Jacob to be a good neighbor. Jacob welcomed them. He helped the new families build their homes, shared his knowledge about the land, and learned from their wisdom about farming and animal care. Tall Sky Woman was overjoyed to have her people nearby. She no longer felt isolated between two worlds. Both worlds were coming together. The little community that formed was unique. Apache families lived alongside white settlers. Children played together, learning both English and Apache. People shared food, stories, and skills. It wasn't perfect. There were still misunderstandings and tensions, but it was a start. In town, attitudes slowly shifted too. The shop owners who'd once charged double prices or refused service now welcomed Jacob and Tall Sky Woman. They'd seen her testimony in court. They'd heard about how she'd helped during the storm. Word had spread about her wisdom and kindness. It was hard to hate someone once you knew them as a person, not just as a stranger. One day in spring, Tall Sky Woman came to Jacob with news that changed everything. "Jacob," she said, taking his hands in hers. "I am with child." Jacob felt his heart stop, then race. We're going to have a baby?" She nodded, her eyes shining with tears and joy. "Yes, in the fall, I think." He pulled her close, holding her carefully as if she might break. "That's wonderful. That's incredible. Are you happy?" "I am very happy," she said, but also scared. What if our child is very tall like me? What if people treat them badly because they are different? Jacob pulled back to look at her face. "If our child is tall like you, then they'll be magnificent. And we'll teach them to be proud, just like your grandmother taught you. We'll teach them about both cultures, both heritages. They'll be strong and wise because they have you as a mother. And brave and kind because they have you as a father," she added. They stood together on their high-roofed porch, looking out at the land that was truly theirs now. The ranch was doing better. The community was growing. And soon, they would have a child. Over the following months, Jacob became even more protective of Tall Sky Woman. He didn't want her lifting heavy things or working too hard. She found this amusing and often ignored his worries, continuing to work as she always had. "Apache women are strong," she reminded him when he fussed. "We do not become fragile just because we carry children." But he noticed she was tired more often. He made sure she rested, brought her special foods, and read to her in the evenings. She seemed to enjoy being cared for, even if she pretended to find it unnecessary. One day, Grey Wolf visited. He looked at his granddaughter with pride and placed his hand on her belly, speaking a blessing in Apache. "This child will be special," he said. "I feel it in my spirit. They will bring both worlds together just as you two have." As summer turned to fall, Tall Sky Woman grew rounder. She moved more slowly, but she never complained. Jacob caught her sometimes standing in doorways, not having to duck, just standing there with a small smile on her face. He knew what she was thinking. Their child would grow up in a house where they could stand tall, no matter how tall they grew. The baby came early one October morning. Tall Sky Woman's aunt and several Apache women came to help with the birth. Jacob paced outside, nervous and terrified. Childbirth was dangerous. So many things could go wrong. But hours later, he heard a baby's cry, strong and loud, announcing its arrival to the world. The door opened, and Tall Sky Woman's aunt smiled at him. "Come meet your daughter," she said. Jacob went inside with shaking legs. Tall Sky Woman was lying in bed, tired but glowing with joy. In her arms was a tiny baby with a full head of dark hair. "Our daughter," Tall Sky Woman said softly. "I thought we could name her after your mother, if you want." Jacob's eyes filled with tears. His mother's name was Rose. "Rose," he said, touching the baby's tiny hand. "Rose Sky Martinez." The baby gripped his finger with surprising strength. She opened her eyes, dark and clear, and looked at him. "She's perfect," Jacob whispered. "You're both perfect." Over the next weeks, they adjusted to life with a baby. Rose was a good baby, healthy and strong. The community rallied around them. Apache women brought traditional foods to help Tall Sky Woman recover. Neighboring ranchers' wives brought baby clothes and advice. Everyone wanted to meet the baby who represented a new beginning. Chester's wife came to visit, holding Rose gently.
"She's beautiful," she said.
"Look at those long legs. She's going to be tall like her mother." "Maybe," Tall Sky Woman said with a smile. "Or maybe not. Either way, she will know she is loved." As winter came again, Jacob sat on the porch one evening, holding Rose while Tall Sky Woman rested inside. He looked at his daughter, at the house they'd rebuilt together, at the community they'd helped create. He thought about that day when Grey Wolf had first brought Tall Sky Woman to his door. He'd been so uncertain then, so worried about what people would think, so focused on the differences between them. Now those differences were what made them strong. She'd taught him about reading the land, about Apache medicine and wisdom. He'd taught her about reading and managing a ranch. Together, they'd created something neither could have built alone. Tall Sky Woman came out and sat beside him. She'd recovered well from the birth, and though she was tired, she looked happy. Content. Home. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About doorways," Jacob said. "When you first came here, you had to duck through every doorway. You didn't fit, but we didn't change you. We changed the doorways." "That is a strange thing to think about," she said with a smile. "No, listen. I think that's what love is. It's not about making someone smaller so they fit into your life. It's about building bigger doorways so they can be their full self. That's what we've done. We built new doorways for each other." Tall Sky Woman was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned her head on his shoulder. "That is wise. For a man who was scared of marriage, you have become very good at it. I had a good teacher." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out. Rose slept peacefully in Jacob's arms. In the distance, they could see lights from the Apache homes nearby. Smoke rose from chimneys. Voices carried on the wind, speaking in both English and Apache. "Do you think she'll have a good life?" Tall Sky Woman asked, nodding at Rose. "Growing up between two worlds?" "I think she'll have the best life," Jacob said. "Because she won't see two worlds. She'll just see one world where different people live together, where tall doorways and short doorways both lead home, where being different is something to celebrate, not hide." "I hope you are right." "I am right. We're proving it every day. Look at what we've built. Not just this house, but this community, this family. We started with nothing but an arrangement and a lot of fear. Now look at us," Tall Sky Woman smiled. "Now look at us," she repeated. Inside the house, the fire crackled warmly. Outside, the night was peaceful. And on the porch, a family sat together, a cowboy who'd learned to see beyond his fears, an Apache woman who'd found a place to stand tall.